Well, I've had a good night's sleep in Niigata, so I feel much more refreshed than I did yesterday. So yeah, a bit of a long day's driving today, so it's just gone 7, so I need to hit the road as soon as possible. My first plan of action is to actually head over to a park that's near the coast here in Niigata, where there is apparently a little bit of a skate park. Probably not going to use it because I don't know if it's going to disturb people at this time in the morning, if there's houses and so forth nearby, but more just for future reference. I think it's mostly just flat ground, which might have a couple of ramps, so we'll just go and check it out. But otherwise, yeah, today's a long day. Heading down to Shiga Prefecture, which is a fair way from here. I'm going to have to travel through the majority of Niigata Prefecture, because Niigata City is sort of like quite in the far north of the prefecture. Down into Toyama Prefecture, and then I think that takes us into Ishikawa, followed by Fukui, and then finally the very last stretch is just about into Shimane Prefecture on Lake Biwa, where I'm going to be staying at Nagahama. So I expect to get there around about 6 to 7 o'clock tonight. So yeah, it's going to take about 10 hours to drive there, I reckon, in total, not including stops. So it's a long day. Anyway, let's get going. It's dry at the moment, so there is a chance to have like 5 minutes on the board. I'm gonna take it. Okay, let's go. Well, they're not wrong. There are a couple of very small ramps there, so let's give it a go. this time last year, that tree was out in full blossom. Looks like it's only just beginning to show signs of life. Oh well, spring's a bit later this year, I guess. When thinking about what to cover in my monologues on some of these videos, not only am I thinking about how to sequence them, but how to not come across as aloof or some kind of jerk. Often I will only speak in terms of I or me because, in all honesty, there is nobody I know better than myself, and if it all sounds a bit me, myself and I, it's not coming from a bad place. Maybe some of it will resonate with you. Last time I talked about why I think vacations, and maybe especially road trips, really begin to give us a sense beyond the life we have become accustomed to, and second to that, why it's important not to become too focused on the past, but there is every reason to look to the future. Think of it as a chink of light coming into an otherwise unknowable tangle in the mind that often keeps us relatively confused when we try to extract it, but somehow begins to unravel on a long journey as some form of stream of consciousness. Japan has given me the time to really unpack my own tangle, my own confusion. Fundamentally, I think the reason I made the decision to have a clean career break in Japan wasn't really just down to the fact I wanted to do a more meaningful day job as I saw it, because that places the focus back on work again. Over time, I have come to see that our day jobs often end up monopolising our lives to levels that if it all happened at once, we'd probably reject it out of hand. But because it happens to us so gradually, we are raised to accept it piece by piece that this is the only way to live a life, and the imagination is dulled to an extent that makes it hard to visualise another way. Each pay rise, each career hop in exchange for better money, a little bit more of our liberty and individuality is given away. The key ingredient my life in Japan has afforded me is a lot more freedom, and that suits me. I think in many ways this is why I tried to become a professional photographer. I wanted to dictate my own hours and do what I wanted to do. It didn't come to pass, but I think it's now for the best, because all I was really doing was swapping one way of working for another way of working, and still having something that was denying me the full fruits of life. Back in the 1960s, 70s and even into the 80s, one of the big questions was how people were going to pass their time in the coming age of leisure due to an increasingly mechanised age. Social scientists asked how will people be paid if they weren't exchanging their liberty for money in the form of work, as many of us have been doing since the Industrial Revolution. The new age of leisure didn't come to pass. All of the time-saving devices in the world ended up creating work in themselves. Whether it's enriching work is another question. But then, whether it's sorting out a filing cabinet full of old junk or a trash can of a shared drive, work has always had its tasks that don't speak to someone like me. We all found ways of staying employed, and technology has made some people feel on call 24/7 in a sense, whether it's through the passive obsession of checking social media or email at all hours of the day and feeling the necessary urge to reply instantly or post relatively constantly, or the other end of the spectrum where the slave-driving boss expects their staff to be picking up work at all hours of the day because they have their work email on their phones or remote working facilities. All we need to know is that the new age of leisure has never occurred, and what was once a hot topic of discussion of how we'll entertain the people seems like a discussion people can scarcely believe was even considered a big social issue once upon a time. Have we given up on the idea of having a life outside of work, or did it not even occur to us? Because if you're like me, we just accepted the world as it was given to us. So many of us, myself included over time, became so accustomed to a life of going to work and all that entails, a long commute which costs a small fortune to be endured in discomfort, watching an hourglass spin on a screen as your own hands and body become idle and unaccustomed to making things happen without electronics, medicating a banging headache when you eventually get home, eating shit food because you're too tired to care what you cook, and drinking alcohol to dull the brain before it all begins the very next day. And what for? You gradually climbed a ladder to earn more money, but again you followed the well-worn path. A better apartment, a better house, a better car, a better phone, a washing machine that could sense the weight of the load and suggest an optimal washing program, a TV that could show you 4 programs at once and choosing from a range of fabrics for your new sofa now that it needs to match your new decor. It's all gone a bit train spotting, but that's what happens in a sense. You seem to earn more, but sometimes it feels like life is just not exciting or something to yearn for. There are some lucky people who do jobs they absolutely love, and really, being paid for what they do and what they love seems almost absurd, but for many of us, we don't have that fortune. The question is, how do you change it? For me, it all goes back to freedom. All of my life up to this point, at which I left for Japan, had been binding me up in its chains, closing its walls in on me, and limiting my choices and freedom. But what for? A better sofa? And I had done it all because it seemed like this is just what happens as you get older and further away from your youth. You just have to accept it, chow down, grind out, and suck it up. I chose not to. For most of us, you'll never have enough money in life. There'll always be that dread when you fill up the car or the electricity bill comes through. It's endless, and it doesn't matter how much you earn in most of our cases, because there'll always be this feeling of it not being quite enough. All of that way of living is designed to keep you fueling an economic machine that will take your liberty in exchange for not quite enough money, and take what money you do have and feed it back into the machine, tricking you into feeling like you need the stuff. But what I needed more was less stuff and more experiences. Breaking those chains is such a tough thing to do. I don't pretend it isn't, and maybe I've only been able to because for many years I worked 2 full-time jobs, my day job and my own business, and I just about saved up enough money to make the leap to come to Japan. In a way, the reason my first year was tough going was because of a surplus of freedom and still being very much entrenched in the way that I'd been taught to live my life. I didn't know what to do with myself, and I didn't really know how to live. Freedom in of itself doesn't provide. What you do within freedom does. Over time, for reasons I will go into in another video, I found myself making use of my time in ways that make sense to me. Nothing epitomises it better than how I have fallen head over heels, quite literally at times, with skateboarding. It's something I can spend hours doing, out in the open, nobody seeing in any form, doing nothing productive in the traditional sense, and getting hurt whilst doing it, and all for the love of moving around the world on a plank of wood with some wheels attached to it. It's not like a completed drawing that when it's finished, it's there to be treasured. When I stop skating, it's gone. It will only ever exist as an experience within myself. Sure, it may occasionally get videoed or photographed, but really, I do it for the experience that it creates within me, and it acts as an energy and a fuel that has really revitalised my life. It literally has no point by all traditional measures of productivity. Freedom of choice is a huge motivation for me. It's not a political thing, it's about accepting my time here in life is limited, and I want to make the most of it that I can. From that has come the energy to really start appreciating experiences in life, and to really detach myself from material things. That said, I have never been overly materialistic, but I now find myself making very conscious decisions on a weekly basis that mean in the future I can move around solely for the benefit of creating future experiences. Driving through the torrential rain and mountain including murk in the middle of March down the coast of Japan is that kind of experience amongst many. Only yesterday with a friend on some sightseeing, we returned to a spot where I skated multiple times a week last summer. It was one of the few places in that part of the Iwate Prefecture where I could skate without hassle. It was this overgrown place where you had to fight through the gaps in the vegetation to get to the smooth ground of this long-lost parking area. It felt like I was a child discovering for the first time in human history a new hideout, a new place for a den, a new place for making the world seem like one great expanse of possibilities that only required a spark of a dream to make happen. I can speak of it like that because the world needs more childlike wonder in it. Many very pleasant memories were made up there last summer, watching the sun go down, overlooking the huge gorges of the Sanriku coast, and skating until well after twilight had come and gone to kiss the sun goodnight. But this magical hidden area has now all been tidied up, vegetation cleared and cut down for all to see. It looks a lot better for it, admittedly, But again last year, it was my place to dream and while away the hours for nothing other than my own pleasure. I skated there and it didn't need social media to prove it. These kinds of experiences I've created within me keep me going to this day. It doesn't matter what it is or how you do it, it's having the freedom to do it in the first place. The world may have forgotten how it was going to create a new age of leisure, but by accepting that I'd rather have more of my freedom and less money, I've been able to create self-sustaining things that I don't believe any day job will ever provide for me, no matter how much you paid me. I chose to give up money in exchange for getting back some of my liberty, and with that, have the chances to create experiences like this spring vacation. Not everything happens in a typical Kodak moment. Some things happen in the unguarded moments of time, the unexpected that becomes future pinked. It's constantly rolling the dice and seeing what happens and going with it and surfing along the asphalt of life, eager to see what's around the next corner and seeing off cynicism in the rear view. It's only by clearing my own confusion that I see my personal freedom is something so intrinsic to my own well-being and is the foundation of absolutely everything else in my life. You couldn't pay me more to give up any more of my liberty. I've broken the machine's chains that held me back and started learning how to live a life. can't see a damn thing. But this is Shiga Prefecture. It's beautiful, isn't it? I particularly like it at this time of night. It really sets off the ambience of the place. Anyway, it's been a pretty treacherous evening for driving, so I'm going to concentrate. So just coming up is a little signpost on the left that tells us how far it is from Niigata. I don't know if it will come out in the video, but there it is. 500 kilometers away. And my back feels like it is.